So we have all these crazy things that happen. Does anybody know the composer Paul Shiara?
Yep.
Paul's a pretty well-known composer. And when I first got all this stuff, it was around 1968 or so. I said, "Come over to the house, Paul. I'll show you what I have." So I came over, and he was taking notes. I didn't pay too much attention. I demonstrated it all. And he called me up a couple of days later and said, "I wrote a piece for you. And it's called Willow Willow for Amplified Bass Flute and Percussion." It's a very good piece. We premiered it at the Monday evening concerts. And it's you can get it on the CRI label. And he wrote the bass flute like you'd write a flute part, and clear up to the top of the register all over the place, little cadenzas, plus the tone divider and the echo plex. It's a fascinating piece. I went to do a recording session, this wasn't very long ago, it was about 3 years ago or something like that, and they did the scherzo from the Midsummer Night's Dream. And so we did it, we recorded it, and the director of the movie said, he asked me if I'd stay over, stay a little longer, and I said, okay. And he said, this is for a movie, and the flute player is very nervous in this movie because he's about to get killed and eaten by this evil psychiatrist, and I want you to make some mistakes. And so we overdubbed a bunch of mistakes, and of course, if I overdid, he said that's too much, So, and we cut the mistakes the way he wanted the mistakes. And then he said to me, he said, we're going to film this on Monday. He said, could you come and be an advisor on the picture? And I said, well, yeah, if you want me to, I'll be glad to. He said, do you have a tux? I said, yeah. He said, why don't you just be in the picture? So I said, fine, great, I hear you. So I went there, and it was The Red Dragon, in case anybody was wondering what I'm talking about. It's a movie called, did anybody see that? The Red Dragon? Yes, Steve saw it. Did you see it, Dan? And so the guy sitting next to me, he was an Englishman, and he's a flute player. And back Jimmy Galway said, yeah, I know him. I gave him flute lessons in England, and I showed him how to do something. I don't know what it was, but something happened to him when he hurt his hand or something, so he became an actor. Then he got so I could play again, and so he was playing and acting. So they hired him because he was an actor and a flute player, and they figured he'd be perfect. He was bald, and he looked a little different than other people. That was perfect for this movie. So I was sitting next to him, and my job was to frown at him whenever he'd make a mistake. So we'd be playing, and then he'd do something wrong. And so they filmed it, and then they said, come look at this thing we just filmed. And I said, oh, okay. And Brett Ratner was the director of the film. Brett, so he sort of a wild kid, actually. I don't know how to describe him, but anyway, so we went over, and he said, you're overacting. Broke me out. So I had to be a little more subtle when he made mistakes. So that was The Red Dragon. That was a lot of fun. I like doing different things, obviously. I was working one day a TV show with Pat Williams. Has anybody ever heard of Pat Williams? He's a very good film TV composer. Wonderful. He can write anything. You talk about a composer who can write anything. Pat Williams can write anything. And he used to do a lot of TV shows, occasionally a movie, more TV than anything. And so we were doing a TV show, and he wrote this alto flute solo. And I said, and so I played it. Then he went into the booth to check it out, see if it was all right, and the take was okay. And he came out of the booth, and he was laughing hysterically. And he said, you know what that director inside that booth said to me? He said, how did you get that sound? He said, it sounds just like a real flute. These directors are so used to hearing electronic instruments, electronic flute. When they hear something real, they're totally amazed by it. that's where the industry has gone. And then another time I did something with Pat Williams. I think you remember that, don't you, Dave? Where I was doing Columbo, and the guy, who's the star of Columbo? Peter Falk. Yeah. He said, "That's really good," when it came out. And who did that? I said, "Well, I played this little solo." So I had him autograph my solo, and I put it up on the wall. So crazy things happen to you in Hollywood. It's just really very funny. I was doing another call once with Lilo Schifrin, and he needed a shakuhachi. He said, "You got one?" I said, "No, I don't need a shakuhachi." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'll make the flute sound like a shakuhachi." Yeah, and he said, "Really?" And you can do that on a flute. I mean, you just use a different kind of attack, because acoustically it's essentially the same. It might not be exactly the sound of the shakuhachi, but it was certainly good enough for this show we were doing. We were doing something once with Henry Mancini, and he decided he wanted to tune the orchestra in quarter tones. Half the orchestra one pitch, half the orchestra quarter tone on. And so we did it. It didn't work very well. He decided against it. But I said, "Henry, Henry was a flute player. Did you know that?" Yeah, Henry Mancini, he said he was Maurice Sharp, I think, with Cleveland Orchestra. Played flute and piano, and he was a pianist with big bands, and met the girl singer in the band who became his wife, and then he went on to Hollywood. But so I said to him, "Henry, pulling this flute out, making it a quarter tone lower, this is when we had the old scale." I said, "It makes the flute a tune." And it did, because over the years they kept shoving the head joint in to get up to pitch, and it threw the whole scale of the flute out. So by pulling it out, so I was playing about 435 or something like that. The flute suddenly was in tune. You know what I'm talking about? Then they finally came up with the modern flutes. The flute itself sort of has a soothing quality, as we all know. And so there's a famous story of Carmine Coppola. Have you ever heard of him? Yeah. You know Francis Ford Coppola, of course, was his dad, who was a very good flutist, by the way, and a good composer. He wrote the music for that silent movie Napoleon, which Mike Surratt conducts many times. Conducted it all over the world, I guess, Mexico. Anyway, and Carmine was first flute in the Detroit Symphony, first flute with Toscanini. His brother told me the story was, he said they were doing Afternoon of the Faun, and they did it with some guest conductor, I don't know who it was, and Julius Baker called up Carmine and said, "That was absolutely beautiful. You really phrased that nicely." And then a few weeks later, they did it with Toscanini. And you know how controlling Toscanini was. He's telling you how to play every note. And Carmine didn't sound too hot. And so Julius Baker called him up and said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, it was Toscanini conducting." It's typical. You got to give somebody some freedom. But there's an interesting story about Carmine when he was a little boy. He grew up in gangster town, I don't know where it was, in Chicago or New York, wherever it was. And his dad repaired the guns for the gangsters. So the gangsters would be coming in to do a job, and they'd be all hyped up, they're ready to go out and do their next whatever they're going to do. And they wanted their guns fixed. And the little Carmine was sitting there once, and these gangsters, they were really just so tense and upset that Carmine's dad said, "Get out your flute." He said, "Play something for him." And so Carmine did. And Carmine told the story. And he started playing the flute. He said you could just see all the tension absolutely drain out of these gangsters' faces. So, and Francis Ford put that in The Godfather, put that little scene in.